I never expected silence to feel this heavy. Not the kind that suffocates, but the kind that pulls two people closer without permission. She sat across from me, her hand resting on the table, fingers drumming lightly, as though she were keeping time with some secret thought. I couldn't stop watching the rhythm, or the way her eyes refused to meet mine for too long. She was older, not in the way people mean when they say it casually, but in the way that carried weight, grace carved by time, confidence softened by private regrets. There was a steadiness in her, something I didn't have, something that made me lean forward without realizing. And yet, beneath it, I could sense it, a crack, a hesitation she never let others see. I didn't know if she realized how much space she occupied in my head, or how her nearness had started to feel like gravity. When her hand finally brushed mine, not even a full touch, just the accidental graze of skin against skin, I couldn't breathe. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said softly, not scolding, but warning. Her voice was low, unsteady in a way that betrayed her. I tried to answer, but nothing came. Instead, I shifted in my seat, pretending to adjust, though all I wanted was to close the distance between us. My fingers lingered on the table where hers had passed, the ghost of contact burning like heat left behind. The light in the room was muted, a pale afternoon glow slipping through the curtains. It painted her in a way that made the edges of the moment blur, like she didn't belong to reality, but to some private dream I wasn't supposed to enter. Her lips parted slightly, like she was about to say something, but instead she bit down, as if swallowing the thought. She leaned closer then, just enough that I caught the faintest trace of her perfume, something warm, quiet, impossible to name. My chest tightened. "If I whisper your name," she murmured, her eyes finally locking with mine, "don't react." The pause that followed was unbearable. My throat tightened, words pushing to break through, but I knew what she meant. "Don't give us away. Don't let the world know what's happening here." Still, I managed to reply, low and unsteady, "I'll just hold you tighter." Her hand stopped its restless drumming. She drew it back toward herself, but slower than necessary, as though testing if I'd stop her. I didn't. I couldn't. The silence stretched again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was thick with the things we hadn't said, the questions neither of us dared to answer. I noticed the way her shoulders shifted, a faint tremor betraying what she fought to conceal. Her control was slipping, and it terrified me because it meant mine would too. "People will notice," she whispered, almost to herself. "Let them," I answered before I could think. My voice sounded too sure, even though my pulse betrayed me, hammering in my throat. Her gaze softened then, a dangerous softness that promised more than either of us could handle. She leaned back slightly, but her eyes held me in place as though nothing else in the room mattered. And then, the sound of the door clicking open broke everything. Her body stiffened, her hand retreating as if burned. I turned, my chest tight, but my eyes found only the shifting shadow of someone stepping inside. The spell shattered, but not completely. Not yet. The door had closed again, whoever entered leaving as quickly as they came. But the silence they left behind felt different this time, sharper, more dangerous. She shifted in her seat, straightening her posture, and with that single movement, she became untouchable again. I should have looked away. I didn't. Her hand hovered near her glass of water, fingers curling but not lifting. She didn't drink, just kept her eyes low, as if the act of meeting mine might betray something neither of us wanted named. I could see it though, the small tremor at the corner of her mouth, like she wanted to say something and hated herself for even considering it. She broke the silence first. "You're too young for this," she said flatly. The words weren't cruel, but they carried weight, the kind that pressed on my chest. "Too young for what?" I asked, though I already knew. Her eyes flicked up, sharp, then softened immediately as though the force had startled even her. For me, the words clung to the air between us. I could have laughed it off, pretended it meant nothing, but the truth was I had never felt more certain of anyone in my life. My age was a number, yes, but it didn't measure the way I noticed her. The pauses between her sentences, the way her hands lingered on the edges of things, as though afraid to hold on too tightly. "I've had my share of mistakes," she added, quieter this time, almost confessional. "Things I don't want to repeat." Her voice wavered at the edges. Regret. I could feel it, even if she didn't say the word. I wanted to ask what she meant, who had left those marks on her, What choices still echoed inside her chest? But instead, I just leaned forward slightly, enough that the distance felt smaller. I'm not asking you to repeat anything, I said. She smiled then, but it wasn't real. It was the kind of smile people wear when they're protecting themselves. You don't know what you're asking. Maybe I didn't. But I knew this. When her hand brushed my shoulder a moment later, she didn't pull away as fast as she should have. Her fingers lingered, grazing the fabric of my shirt, sending a heat that spread far deeper than the skin. Her breath was close now, close enough that I could feel the faint warmth of it near my jaw. I wanted to turn, to close the space, but her hand slipped away at the last moment, her control tightening again like a leash. And yet, the damage was already done. The quiet tether between us had grown stronger, undeniable. Don't make me regret this, she whispered, eyes fixed on the table as if it could anchor her. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Then don't walk away. Her gaze lifted slowly, meeting mine, and this time, she didn't look away. The pause stretched, filling the room with a silent electricity neither of us dared to break. For the first time, I felt it. She wasn't just warning me off. She was warning herself. The evening stretched longer than either of us intended. The room was dim now, the last streaks of daylight fading into the kind of quiet where even the smallest sound seemed too loud. She stood by the window, arms folded, her silhouette framed against the pale glow outside. I stayed seated, pretending to check my phone, though I hadn't read a single word. My eyes were only on her. The vibration startled both of us. Her phone lit up on the table, the name flashing across the screen. She froze, her shoulders tense. For a moment, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, with a sharp breath, she reached for it and silenced the call without a word. Her eyes flicked to mine, and in them I saw everything she hadn't said. The risk, the people who could never know, the consequences waiting if we slipped. You should go, she whispered. But I didn't move. My body stayed rooted in the chair, as if leaving now would mean letting the moment dissolve into something ordinary. Do you really want me to? She turned then, finally facing me. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The distance between us was unbearable, the air thick with everything she was fighting to hold back. I rose slowly, every step toward her tightening the coil in my chest. When I was close enough, I could see the faint tremor in her hands, the way her breath caught when I leaned just a little nearer. Someone will notice, she said, her voice thin, a threat about to snap. Then we'll be careful, I answered, softer than I meant. She laughed under her breath, but it wasn't amusement, it was fear. You don't understand. For you it's curiosity, maybe. I cut her off before I could stop myself. It's not curiosity. The words hung between us, heavier than I intended. Her eyes locked on mine, searching for something, maybe a lie. When she found none, she stepped closer. Her arm brushed against mine, her warmth sinking into me. I didn't dare move, afraid that even the smallest gesture would tip us over the edge. The silence grew unbearable. Her face was inches from mine now, close enough that I could see the faint line of tension at the corner of her mouth. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat louder than the last. Her lips parted, but just as she leaned, the sound of footsteps in the hallway shattered the moment. We both froze. The doorknob rattled, then stilled, the shadow of someone passing just beyond the glass. Her body stiffened, but she didn't step back. Not this time. Her hand found my arm, not in invitation, but in restraint. Don't, she whispered, her voice trembling. But she didn't let go. The door never opened. The footsteps faded. And still, she stood too close, her breath brushing my skin, her hand holding me in place. We hadn't crossed the line, but we were standing on it now, together. The night pressed against the windows, the air inside heavy and unmoving. Neither of us spoke for a long while, as if silence itself had become safer than whatever words we might let slip. But silence has its own danger. She was pacing now, one hand resting against her temple, the other trailing across the back of the chair, as though she needed something solid to steady her. Her composure was slipping. I could see it in the quick, uneven way she breathed. Finally, she stopped, turned to me, and said, "This can't happen." Her words were sharp, but her voice trembled. I rose from my chair slowly, cautious, as if any sudden move might scare her into retreating. Then why are we still here? Her eyes narrowed, but not in anger, in something closer to desperation. Because I don't trust myself to leave. The admission cracked the air between us. My chest tightened. The rhythm of my heart beat too fast, too loud. I took a step closer. She didn't move. Another step, and I could see her lashes trembling, the faint sheen of nervous heat at her throat. "Tell me to go," I said quietly, my voice rough. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Instead, her hand lifted, hesitated, then brushed the hair back from her face, a small, trembling gesture. I reached up before I could stop myself, my fingers grazing hers, steadying the strand she couldn't quite tame. She closed her eyes at the touch. Just for a moment. "Do you know what people would say?" she whispered, her voice so low I almost missed it. "I don't care." Her eyes opened again, sharp and searching, as though trying to find weakness in me. Instead, she found something else, a stubborn certainty that even I hadn't expected. She stepped closer. Her shoulder brushed mine, the warmth of her body seeping into me. My breath caught. Every instinct told me to move, but my body refused. "This is wrong," she said, her words barely holding together. "Then why does it feel like the only thing that's right?" I answered. Her control broke. I saw it in the way her hand lifted to my chest, pressing lightly, as though she wanted to push me back, but couldn't quite force the motion. Her palm lingered, her fingers curling just enough that I felt the weight of her hesitation. I leaned in, close enough that my breath touched her ear. "Tell me to stop," I whispered. She didn't. The space between us was gone now. My hand slid gently along her arm, steady, deliberate, until my fingers reached her wrist. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into me, her forehead brushing against mine, a quiet surrender. Her lips hovered inches from mine, her breath trembling against my skin. The world had narrowed to this single point. Her, me, the impossible pull we could no longer resist. And then, she whispered, barely audible, "If you cross this line, I won't forgive either of us." Her warning still lingered in the air, her breath warm against my lips. I hadn't moved. Neither had she. It was as if the universe itself was waiting for one of us to flinch. Then the sound shattered us. A soft ding. Her phone again, lighting up the darkened room. She pulled back just enough to glance at it. But in that instant, everything in her face changed. I saw it, fear. She snatched the phone, pressing the screen to her chest before I could see. But the movement was too fast, too defensive. "Who was it?" I asked quietly. "No one," she said, but her voice was strained, her body rigid. It wasn't no one. It was someone. The silence stretched, suffocating. Finally, she let out a shaky breath. "He knows." The words hit harder than I expected. "He," I repeated, my throat tight. She turned away, pacing toward the window, her hand pressed to her mouth. I told myself I could control this, that it wouldn't go this far. But someone saw us. I don't know how much. A sharp chill cut through me, not because of the risk, but because of the way she said it, as though what we had was already doomed. I stepped closer, my hand brushing her arm. She didn't move away, but her shoulders were taut, trembling. "Who?" Her eyes flicked to mine, wide and unguarded. "A friend. Someone I thought I could trust. He sent me a message. He said he's noticed the way I look at you." Her voice cracked on the last words. The room was spinning, but not from fear alone. The thought of someone else watching her, noticing her, knowing what I had only just begun to touch. It burned through me with something darker than jealousy. "Then it's too late," I said, my voice rough. "They already know. Pretending won't erase it." She shook her head, stepping back, her hand brushing against mine by accident. The contact sent heat rushing up my arm, even as she whispered, "This could ruin me." I caught her wrist gently, holding her there. She didn't pull away. Our closeness returned in an instant. The nearness of her body, the trembling between wanting to retreat and needing to stay. "I don't care who knows," I said, though my voice trembled with the weight of it. She closed her eyes, pressing her free hand against my chest. I felt the hesitation in her touch, the uneven rhythm of her breathing. "You don't understand what it costs me," she whispered, leaning into me despite the words. "Then let me carry it," I answered. Her lips parted, her forehead resting briefly against mine. For a moment, it felt inevitable, the choice already made. And then, with a trembling exhale, she whispered, "Tomorrow. If I let this go any further tonight, I won't stop." The next day was unbearable. Hours dragged, But she didn't call, didn't text. I replayed her last words again and again. Tomorrow. The promise, the warning. I didn't know which it was. When I finally saw her, it was almost by accident. She was standing at the end of the hall, her coat still draped over her shoulders as if she hadn't decided whether to leave or stay. Our eyes met, and everything else vanished. She hesitated, then stepped into the room, closing the door softly behind her. The sound echoed like a final lock. We were alone again, no excuses left. I shouldn't be here, she said, her voice low, already trembling. Then why are you? My words were sharper than I intended, but my chest was too tight, my body too restless from waiting. Her eyes glistened with something I couldn't name. Because I don't want to stop thinking about you. That broke me. I moved toward her, slow but certain. She stayed where she was, though I could see the way her breath quickened, the way her fingers curled at her sides. By the time I reached her, the air was heavy with everything we'd tried to hold back. My hand hovered near hers, not touching yet, just close enough for the heat to bridge the gap. Tell me no, I whispered, my voice unsteady. She closed her eyes. Her lips trembled, but no words came. Instead, she stepped forward, just enough that her shoulder brushed mine. The touch was small, accidental to anyone else, but to us it was everything. I'm afraid, she admitted, her forehead tilting forward until it rested lightly against my chest. I exhaled, shaky. My hand lifted, almost without thought, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. My fingers lingered, tracing the curve of her cheek, the soft line of her jaw. She leaned into it, barely, but enough. You don't have to be, I said. She let out a broken laugh, muffled against me. That's the problem. With you. I'm not. The words undid us both. Her hand rose, hesitant, trembling, until it rested against the back of my neck. The warmth of her palm sent a shiver through me. I leaned in, our breaths colliding, her lips just a breath away. It wasn't careful anymore. It wasn't cautious. She lifted her face, her eyes opening to mine, wide, unguarded, full of everything she had tried to bury. And then, finally, she didn't pull back. Her lips met mine in a kiss that wasn't gentle, wasn't patient. It was raw, uneven, almost desperate. The kind of kiss that left no question of what we both wanted, no matter the cost. When she broke away, her forehead stayed pressed to mine. Her voice was a whisper, shaky but sure. Now you know. And I did. The room was still humming with the aftershock of what we had just done. The kiss lingered on my lips, its taste, its heat, the kind of moment that rewrites everything. She had pulled away, but only enough to breathe, only enough to steady herself. For the first time since this began, her eyes didn't dart away. She looked straight at me, as though she'd stopped fighting something inside herself. This is madness, she whispered, but the words held no conviction. Maybe, I said, my voice quiet, but it's ours. Her shoulders sank, as if the weight she'd carried for years had loosened. She exhaled slowly, then rested her head against my chest. My arms moved without thought, wrapping around her, holding her closer than I ever had before. The simple press of her body against mine felt more grounding than anything I'd known. For a long time, we didn't speak. Her breathing evened out, and I felt her hands relax against my back, no longer trembling. It was a silence different from the ones we'd shared before, not suffocating, not heavy with fear. This one was warm, safe. When she finally did speak, her words were muffled against me. I was afraid of the difference, of what people would think. I tightened my hold, lowering my voice so only she could hear. Let them think what they want. They don't see this. They don't see you the way I do. Her hand found mine then, fingers threading slowly through, deliberate, certain. She squeezed lightly, as though testing if I'd pull away. I didn't. I never would. She tilted her face up, and I pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. Not hurried, not desperate like before. This one was steady, a promise in the quiet. Her eyes fluttered closed at the touch, and I felt her lean fully into me, giving herself over to the moment without restraint. We'll have to be careful, she said, though her voice was softer now, gentler. We will, I answered. But we'll be together. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that reached her eyes, erasing the tension that had once lived there. It was fragile, yes, but it was real. We sank onto the couch, side by side, her hand never leaving mine. I studied the way our fingers fit together, the difference in age written in the lines of our skin, but also the closeness that made it meaningless. The world outside still waited, with all its judgment, all its risks. But in that moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was the warmth of her hand in mine, the steady rhythm of her breathing, and the unspoken truth we had finally stopped running from. She turned to me, her voice a whisper, tender and certain. No more hiding. And I knew she meant it. Speech Balloon, did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?